Look at that gear.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got a face for it. That's right.
Yeah. No.
No.
It's always tomorrow.
All right, here we go. Quiet on the set. We'll go live in 20 seconds.
Cue the music.
I'll find a way. For the thrill is gone, I gotta get it on and find that strength. Cause the road I chose, yeah, it's always full. Those highway lights make me feel so safe.
Welcome to Innovative Strategies with Bill Hasse. Innovative Strategies is a show designed to help people with their business and personal financial literacy, but not the way you've known. It's not your grandpa's financial literacy, as Bill uses his 30 plus years in the financial industry to stretch your financial box from, I don't know, let's go 33,262 feet view of things today. Bill and his guests have helped hundreds of clients achieve and surpass their financial goals. Of course, if you have questions, you can email Bill at any time at Bill@BillHasse, that's BILLHAASE.com, or reach out to him right here at 216thenet at gmail.com, and we'll get with you. Today, put me in, coach. Of course, we've got special guest Keri Bruin from Apex Coaching and Consulting. Welcome, Bill.
Good morning, Ken. How you doing?
I am excellent. Thank you, sir.
When is spring coming?
Yeah, right after all of these snowfalls, I think.
Yeah, well, we got 2 inches last Saturday.
Yeah.
We got snow coming on Friday.
Yeah. Worms out today because of all the rain.
Worms are out, so we're kind of in between. Baseball starts tomorrow.
That's right.
Cubbies home opener tomorrow.
I don't know who that is.
In question.
I'm a Sox fan. So.
They get the what?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
The Red Sox?
No, Dodgers and the White Sox.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's an issue you'll have to deal with on your
own.
I've
therapy for that.
Yeah, but today, hey, we got a special guest. Keri Bruin is coming on. We have a couple of different things to talk about today because she is a wealth of knowledge and information. And I want to get her on here, and we're gonna start off by talking a little bit about leadership. But let me introduce you first to Keri Bruin. Welcome from Apex.
Thank you. Good morning.
Love having you. Hey, we're going to show off your website a little bit here, and also I did want to start this morning talking about the leadership role and some of the changes that have occurred recently, like over the past 2 years. And especially in that small business world, I mean, we're trying to help all these small new business owners get up and running and going. How important is that leadership skills?
I think they've always been important, but over the last 2 years, certainly in a lot of cases, we have asked leaders to do things so much differently than they have prior to March of 2020. So we have asked our leaders not only to navigate the logistics of a pandemic with the people who are reporting to them, but in many cases, we've been asking them to do that remotely. And in some cases in a hybrid environment where they have some employees in the office some days, some working from home. And now in some cases, they're bringing people back to the office. So we've really given them some challenges over the last couple of years in asking them to lead.
Yeah, no question. I know my wife has gone back to work 3 days a week minimum or whatnot. And I had a friend reach out to me and say his son was called back to the office, but he hadn't been vaccinated. So when he showed up, they fired him.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, that's going to be an issue. That's a tough one. If you're you're going to put these kinds of restrictions on folks, can you let them just work from home at least a little while longer and have that decision or that choice that they can make? But it's kind of cold, if I'm seeing that leadership's going to treat me like this, or other employees like this, I'm going to be concerned personally about how I'm going to get treated going forward.
Yeah, for certain employees, that may be a factor for them. And depending on, maybe geographically the area that you live and what as an employer you're allowed to do in those circumstances, that may legitimately be an issue, along with the host of other reasons that employees might be finding right now to want to make a change in what they do for a living, whether it's the kind of role that they're doing or the organization that they're doing it for.
Yeah, and that's important too, right? The structure of the organization and the culture of the organization,
Yes.
and that comes from leadership.
Yes, for sure.
So because everybody likes to talk Great American Walkout, the Great Resignation, whatever you want to call it, but folks are kind of, in many ways, just fed up with the way in which they were either being treated or the culture that they're expected to work in.
Yeah, I think what you said is so accurate, Bill. And I was just reading something yesterday. There was a survey that MIT did in one of their management reviews, and it said that the reasons that folks are giving for making changes right now, they're 10 times more likely to leave a role because of a toxic workplace culture than they are because of compensation or any of the other factors. And not to minimize, there are organizations that have legitimate comp issues, but 10 times more likely to leave because of a culture, which is generally created by leadership.
Yeah, because we also know that the challenges that big businesses are having, corporations are having, and bringing people into work and hiring new employees, they're paying more money for lower qualified people. Not a good combination.
No, and especially if they're not then paying attention to the compression that results from that, right? So you're bringing people in at higher wages, potentially with a lower skill set, and not necessarily paying attention to the people who are there currently, maybe with more skills, whom are at that same rate of pay, and what that is the impact that is having on employees as well.
Yeah, that would not make me happy if you bring somebody in new and you put them above me or equal to me and you're the same pay or even greater pay.
Well, that's happened for years. I've been in the banking industry for 20 plus years, and that's always happened. You get the person that let's just use a teller, for example, who's making minimum wage, been there for 15 years and gets a 10% increase or a 3% cost of living increase every year. And then you get, the market shifts and I give Ben, $5 more because now that's what it takes to attract them. And I don't ever adjust the people. And that's happened forever.
It has gone on. And this is why we had this discussion before we came on the air here, where I was talking with Ken about I prefer to work in a world where I have unlimited upside potential of income. And I can't fathom working in a world where I'm making $50,000 a year and that's it. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, no matter how talented I might be, I'm not going to make more than that. And to me, that I have a very difficult time working in that environment. And I think other people have figured that out too. I was looking up some numbers yesterday, and I did not realize that there were 5.4 million applications for new businesses last year. My old source told me there were a little over 2 million businesses that started up. But I did not realize there were 5.4 million applications for new businesses. So there's a lot of folks going out and starting their own gig and trying to get in that world where they can have that unlimited upside potential. I do want to say real quick, good morning to Ted, Sally, Scott. Thanks for joining in. Love having you every week. Yeah. Appreciate that.
So Sally says, isn't that why they encourage you not to talk about what your compensation is in the corporate workplace because of the variation and pay due to cost of living increases over time or whatever the explanation is?
I think it's frowned upon, right? I mean, it's an uncomfortable conversation, right?
And if I could just add to start with, it is illegal to discourage or prevent employees from talking about their pay in the workplace. Wow. So that is protected under the Fair Labor Standards Act. So employees absolutely have that right. But to Sally's point there, I think that is traditionally where that stems from, so that you don't have that kind of transparency in pay to know if you're being paid less than somebody with similar skill sets, right? Or, similar tenure, or whatever the structure may be in your organization. And that's absolutely, I think, where that came from. And a lot of employers may not know that you can not actually prevent people from talking about that. And I would also argue that having a level of pay transparency so that people know what you make at all roles is beneficial in a lot of cases, because even if they don't know, they can speculate for sure. And sometimes that's worse than what the reality is.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're always going to speculate typically in one direction. But businesses typically like to say, let me give you a title, and people love to get those titles, right? But I'm not going to, and with that title comes more responsibility. And I remember at one bank that I worked at, and they said, you're going to be the guinea pig. We're going to give you a new title. You're going to have more responsibility. And I looked at them and I said, okay, well, how much more pay am I going to get? And they were like deer staring in the headlights. They go, oh, we hadn't even thought of that. And just kind of like, you want me to do 20% more work, and you hadn't even thought about paying me for that. Not great leadership.
Yeah, but now you're a business owner, and look how much work you do without getting paid. 75% more work.
Yeah, great point there. Absolutely great point. That's true.
Keri, what is the difference? We were talking a little bit about this in the green room. What's the difference between a leader and a manager in your eyes?
So by definition, I guess that you would say a manager is somebody who keeps the day-to-day going, right? There's somebody that makes sure that the work gets done. A leader is somebody who is setting the agenda, setting the vision, inspiring people to want to do things they didn't think that they were capable of doing, to achieving stretch goals, to inspiring people to follow them in fulfilling the mission and the vision of the organization. And hopefully, as an organization, you're creating people who are capable of doing both of those things. That from a tactical perspective, they're able to make sure what needs to get done gets done, that they're following what they need to from a compliance perspective, right? That they're following those rules, they're checking kind of those boxes, but they're also building teams in which people have the skill set to do the job that they need to do today, to do the job that the organization needs them to do tomorrow, to do what they want to do down the road, and that you're creating a team where people are can be vulnerable with each other and transparent with each other and are there to support the business.
I like that, giving them the opportunity to participate in how they do their job too. Because a lot of folks, it's just directive, right?
Right.
That's the one thing about, you get caught in that corporate world in that that job, and you're told what to do. Okay, so very different from when you get out and you start your own business. Nobody's telling you what to do. Nobody's telling you when to get out of bed. Nobody's telling you how many hours to put in. They don't tell you how to build that business, how to continue to grow. And as you bring employees on, it gets, you're doing that in order to remove some of the hats that you wear, right?
Right. And not giving people the autonomy to complete work in the way that they're able to do it best.
Yeah. And again, you're right. But that's letting people do what they do best. If you hire good people, let them do what they do.
Okay, so Keri, here's a good question for you then.
Sure.
And you have probably seen this with all the companies that you have worked with, and Bill, I know you have. You got a good salesman or saleswoman, and she's rocking it, and she's just doing everything. And then I come up to her and I go, you know what, you're doing great. I want you to lead a team. I want you to be a manager. And I take this person who's great at what they do, and you show them a little bit more money on the, a one way or another through maybe a bonus or whatever, and say, now I want you to lead these people. And they're not they're not designed for that. How do you work with that, Keri, when you go into a company and you see that happening?
So, I mean, that is exceptionally common. It could be sales, it could be operations, it could be logistics, it could be HR, it could be any number of fields. And you could get lucky, right? You could promote a technically competent, technically strong person and have them find their way, right? Just to be naturally good at it. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it doesn't work like that. And what we fail to do as organizations and leaders is to help that person close that gap between taking their technical skills and leading a team of other people to produce kind of similar results. And we don't teach them even the basic things, right? How to give performance appraisals, how to handle maybe a critical conversation or a disciplinary conversation. And we don't teach them how to build teams and inspire trust and do those things. And so we oftentimes don't put that kind of effort into building our leaders, especially our first level leaders who have the most kind of contact and exposure to employees. And then we wonder why there's trouble.
Yeah, and you know what? That's so important. You're right. It's absolutely spot on at all levels. There are folks that I know that are fairly high up in big companies that they get a promotion and they're like, I'm way over my skis on this one.
Yes.
I don't know, how did I get here? And I don't know what's expected of me or how I'm supposed to handle this level. Right. And there's the old adage, fake it till you make it. Well, that doesn't really work all that well because it's a short-term solution to a long-term issue. In my mind.
Yeah.
So there needs to be that training, that coaching. That's a part of what you do as well. Is you're involved in the coaching and helping folks become more confident and comfortable in their new roles.
Absolutely. Yep. And so that's what I do. And, prior to starting Apex Coaching and Consulting, I worked in HR and corporate HR for 20 years, for most of it in a senior leadership role. So I have that ability then to bring those experiences in working with leaders and leading teams in, but helping, whether it be a new leader or established leader, kind of carve out that space, have a safe space to process through the challenges that they're facing, figure out the solutions that they need to lead that team, set tough goals for themselves and achieve those objectives and work with them on progressing towards those things.
That's it. Of course, that voice is the voice of Keri Bruin. And Keri, if people want to know more about what you do or get in touch with you to, just figure out how to be better at leading and coaching, how do they do that?
So my website is right here. It's www.apexccllc.com, or they can drop me an email at Keri, Keri, at apexccllc.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Bill, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
They can't.
Tune in every week to Innovative
They can come out here every week and listen in. Now that we're back in Kansas again, right?
That's right.
Obviously. Reach me at Bill at BillHaase.com. It's Bill at BILLHAASE. And of course, we can always go to 216thenet@gmail.com and put innovative strategies in the subject line. Yep. Be fantastic. But so we've had a couple of comments here, and Scott's talking about not a fan of talking about how much money you make and everything. Scott, that's true throughout life in many ways. People don't talk about money. They don't, like I've said how many times on this show, spouses don't talk about money.
Right.
They don't teach their kids about money. They don't talk about money. I meet with clients. The probably the number one thing that keeps people from talking to a financial advisor is they don't want to talk about their money.
Yeah.
But that's what their biggest concern in life is. So it's a tough road to haul, and we need to open up more about this. We need to have greater understanding, greater knowledge, get that financial literacy out there. But that's part of it.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the coaching. What other areas do you work in outside of just the leadership roles and things?
Yep. So another thing that I have been doing a lot of, especially for the last couple of years, is helping small and mid-sized businesses fill their HR expertise gap without having to add overhead. And so for a lot of our small businesses, they might be at a place where they don't have HR on staff. They're not there yet, but they still need to they have HR questions. And over the last few years, especially doing a lot of employee surveys, a lot of stay interviews, and helping these businesses find out what are some of the issues that are impacting their employees? How can they be proactive in doing some of the things that they need to do to prevent their employees from being part of the Great Resignation and the Great Walkout? So that's been kind of a predominant thing over the last year for sure.
We just heard that. You and I were on a group yesterday, and one gentleman brought up that fact that he had just lost a very good employee because that employee needed greater benefits. They had a family, and the gal needed just better benefits, and that wasn't something he could provide. So you lose a good employee for that one simple reason. Wasn't over money, wasn't over poor leadership or poor management or anything like that. Simply, you needed good benefits. So that's important. But how hard is that for a startup, small business company to provide those?
Yeah. So there is to provide benefits.
Yeah.
There's usually a cost to it, and it's usually one of your highest costs as an employer, right? Payroll and providing benefits are up there with lots of other capital expenses and things. There are options, and I don't do that as a consultant, but I certainly have lots of resources. If you're a small business and you want to be connected to maybe some other benefits options, happy to point you in the right direction. But I will say to that point, there is not always something you can do for every person who's going to leave your organization. However, I would argue, though, having an environment where people are willing to be candid with you about what they are experiencing, what some of the dissatisfiers are for them, it does at least give you the information and the option then to see if there's something you can do about it, or to potentially put yourself in a position where you're not dealing with a 2-week notice, but maybe you're getting a more lengthy notice, right? That you're able to then think about backfilling. And so that's great. If you as a organization feel that maybe your culture isn't going to allow for that kind of candor, having you or your leaders just start asking these questions, you can certainly look at working with a third party then to do that, so that it puts some anonymity in there, right? So the employees aren't disclosing that information directly to you as an employer, but it's coming through a third party.
So a third party being something like a PEO.
Potentially, but also looking at engaging with somebody from a consulting perspective, or there's organizations that will do your surveying or do your stay interviews for you, provide you that information, but not necessarily, give you exactly this employee said what, so that it provides some anonymity and some feelings of safety then for the employee, but you're still getting the information.
Yeah, I mean, because it is tough. It's tough for any business owner to want to pay for something that doesn't have a revenue generating aspect to it, right? It's kind of like when you remodel your kitchen and you want to expand it, and you got to put that $7,000 beam up in the ceiling that you're never going to see. Mm-hmm. But it's painful because it costs a lot of money in order for you to make it look like you want it to look. That's my analogy anyway.
It's a good one.
But so that is tough. But it's important because people need protection, right? They need coverage.
Yeah.
Are there ways to do this, like as opposed to bringing somebody in and paying for those services? Maybe working with an employee and just saying, how about I give you an extra $5,000 a year, towards your health insurance? Can you do that legally? Or do you just say, I'm going to give you $5,000 to have more dinners out on the town, but really you're going to spend it on health insurance?
So can you give employees additional money that they can use for healthcare? Yes. I would be cautious about how I went about that, in that there is not any sort of discriminatory ways in which you're selecting who you're giving the money to and who you're not.
Right.
that you are accounting for what you're doing. So sometimes if you add something just to somebody's base salary and you want to make a change down the road, it was intended for benefits, there isn't necessarily a recollection of that conversation. So documentation is key. So I would be mindful of putting together a strategy that either impacts all employees or is that you can prove that wasn't done discriminatorily.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because then there's the hiring practices where, it's going to be 30, 60, 90 days before you're fully on board or considered a full employee. And that helps kind of reduce some of the costs of bringing a new employee on to some extent. Mm-hmm. But again, it's tough to put money out for a piece of your business that is not revenue generating.
Yeah.
And I think that makes that choice.
Yeah, and I can understand. I think there's a lot of things that we do for our businesses, though, in hopes that they pay off in certain ways. And, I would suggest that when you look at the cost of turnover, just generally losing an entry-level employee, I think the estimates is about 35 to 40% of their annual salary that you will spend to replace that person and all of the direct and indirect costs. And as you start looking at more skilled employees and your leadership employees, losing an executive, the estimate is it's around 400% of their annual salary, given all of the connections they have, the board relationships they have,
right.
And so it's expensive to lose people. And so if you can put a little bit of money into preventing them from going, it can prevent a lot of those costs.
Absolutely. And there's also that little thing called key man insurance.
Yeah.
To protect yourself, key man being, if it's the head salesperson, because we talked about and the head salesperson, now we want to make you a manager. Well, that he or she might be a great salesperson, but have zero management skills. They just want to be left alone and go out on their own, let them do their thing.
Yep. So of course, we've got Keri Bruin from Apex Coaching and Consulting. They coach. They've, of course, as she said, her background's HR, so they're good in HR consulting as well. Just fantastic stuff. And you can visit her website, of course, out at apexccllc.com. Apex, APEXCCLLC.com. And here's what I love about their website, folks. You go out there and check it out. There it is. They're not gonna have pop-ups and flashy things. You want to know the basics, and that's what you get. Now,
what I'm looking at,
as I was out there, you had mentioned that in a lot of corporations and even small businesses, leaders will go out and find the training, and they'll start doing that themselves because they want to improve themselves. How often do you see that, and how, as a small business who may be growing with, I don't know, let's just say maybe 5 to 7, or under 20 employees anyway.
That's 85% of the small businesses out there are 20 employees and under.
So let's talk about that. How do we incorporate some sort of training, or do we just allow our employees to go out there and do it and fear losing them?
So I will tell you, as a coach, I have a good number of my clients who come to me personally. They're paying personally. They're doing that without business sponsorship. And I have seen increasingly over the last year, people reaching out for coaching because they want to make a change in their role, and usually outside of the organization. And so there are people reaching out to do that personally to better themselves. However, I have corporate clients as well who will invest in training for their employees to help those employees grow, to help them develop as leaders, but also to partner with the coach to say, here are the things we need this person to focus on. Here are their goals and objectives for the year. Yes, as an organization, we're going to support them, but we also want them to have that space to dedicate to working through those things on their own, because not everybody wants to be completely kind of vulnerable and thinking out loud in front of their boss all the time, right? They want to get their stuff together. They bring their A game then when they're talking to their boss. And so it gives them that space as well. So there's organizations that partner with coaches and various coaches to give their employees that opportunity. As in some cases, right, it fills a role of it's a benefit, right? It's a perk that says, we like you, we think highly of you, we want to help you develop your leadership skills. It is also a way to help ensure that that person is delivering on the things that you want them to as a leader.
Yeah, and that's great stuff. It's tough to. So, from your perspective, what would you say is the difference between the coaching an organization versus an individual? I mean, we can all come up with some general ideas, but from your perspective.
So when I am coaching somebody who is coming to me as an individual, they have their individual professional goals in mind. And so I don't do generally life coaching outside of kind of people's professions. And we're working on their professional goals longer term. So, what they want to do with their career. In many cases, a lot of these folks are well aware of the areas where they've got some opportunity to develop and grow and where some of their weaknesses are, and they want to shore those things up. In a lot of cases, it's newer leaders who haven't had that mentorship, that training internally. The difference is that when I'm coaching people through an organization, that their leader and sometimes leaders above them are involved in setting the agenda for the coaching. So there are the opportunities to focus on some of their strengths and their weaknesses. It's usually directed at advancing their role in the organization. And a lot of times corporations will specify that as the coach, you can't engage with them about looking for roles outside of the organization, right? You can't coach them to leave the organization. So,
well, we all know that typically in order to really climb that financial ladder of income, historically, it has been changing jobs.
Yeah.
Because you're only going to get that 2 to 3% cost of living increase, COI per year. But and Alex, thanks for joining in this morning from Chicago.
Sally asks, if you're considering working with a coach as a small business owner, what are the things you should think about to prepare for the initial conversation? Where do you typically start?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Sally. And I think you may want to do some pre-thought on, is there a certain level of employee, or is there a certain group of employees that you want to provide that coaching for? I think you're going to want to think about what kinds of things you want people to have coaching on. So if those are things like, are there leadership skills? Is that maybe as an organization, you have some KPIs or some objectives that they're assigned for, and is that what you want to coach people towards? I think you should think about what kind of cadence that you want to have coaching on. What is the frequency that you want to do that? What are there work hours that you want to commit to that? Do you want a coach who's going to come on site and work with you, or are you going to have somebody that's doing this virtually? I would also encourage you, if you are coaching, looking at bringing coaching into your organization, to talk to a number of different coaches, and also consider the possibility of presenting your employees with an option of more than just one coach. Because everybody has different chemistry, right? Everybody has different styles. Not everybody may resonate with me, right? And want, me to coach them, nor would I want to work with every individual out there. And so allowing employees some selection in who they resonate with, who they connect with, is also not a bad idea, to provide them that.
That's one of the perks of being your own business owner, is you can choose who you work with and who you don't want to work with, because there are both kinds, right? You don't want to work with somebody, like in my world, you don't want to work with somebody who's going to be constantly calling you, what's the market doing? How's my investments going?
Yeah.
What's happening with my portfolio, over and over. And they can bog you down from getting your job done and doing your work. But a question for you. So there's got to be some kind of a way to measure the steps, like you talk about, setting goals and meeting and reaching those goals. But do you set timeframes for measurement? Are you getting there? Are you already on your way, or are you going to wait until the end of November and say, okay, have you gotten close to reaching your goals? You've got 1 month left, and packing everything into 30 days.
Yeah. And so that is one of the things that, and all coaches might handle this differently. What I like to do is to start off the conversation with involving the leader and the individual that's going to be coached, mutually establishing goals, setting up some points along the way. And it depends on how long the coaching engagement is going to be, but setting up some points where we're going to check in together, the leader, the employee, and myself. And I never share anything that has been communicated in session, but we talk about whether or not we're moving in the right direction towards those goals. So it isn't just you engage with a coach and you see what happens, right? 6 months later or a year later. There are points along the way that are built in to check in for those purposes. Do we need to recalibrate? Have things changed in the business, right? Was there something that it was a priority and now it's shifted? Are there things that we can do, like a 360 feedback for this leader to see if things have changed or improved? And you can build that stuff into the process with the coach that you're working with.
Well, you talked about that you kind of working with folks in confidence.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're working in folks with confidence, you're working with an employee and you were working with the manager or the leader, and you're not going to share the conversations that you have. It's got to kind of make it challenging to say, well, here's a change or a shift that we need to make to be more efficient.
Yep. And so those are things, I mean, you can talk about progress towards goals and objectives. You can talk about what that leader thinks that the employee needs to do. What I don't share is information that the employee gives me as, potentially things that they're struggling with. I may encourage them to share that with their leader or do that together in a group. I won't be sharing things that are set in confidence.
Yeah, that's important. That's sharing.
Yeah. So
talking it out.
A listener texted in and says, annual reviews. That's it.
There's
so those are dreaded and feared, right, by the person giving the annual review and the person receiving. It's about high anxiety.
I always felt it didn't matter how good a job I did. I know that annual review was going to have at least one negative thing in there in order to just keep me down.
So Keri, I think, right, I've been, again, in a leadership position for over 20 years. I think that this is HR's way of saying, hey, we're just going to keep tabs on you. So if we have to fire you, we can say we've done the things.
Right.
Is that what?
That's the feeling.
Walk us through your thoughts on that.
Okay. So it shouldn't be that way, and it shouldn't feel that way. And unfortunately, it oftentimes does. I will say, from a compliance perspective, there is a reason why an organization would want to have reviews documented, right? That they took the opportunity to give people feedback, because if they are ever challenged, that information is all going to be requested from them. And so there's a reason. But I have heard of organizations that will never let you give somebody all exceeds or a 5 or whatever you want to call it, or you're required to put critical information in there. And I personally don't agree with that. I believe that if there is an opportunity to provide constructive feedback on areas for development, that you can include that, but that shouldn't be the first time that somebody has heard that information.
Interesting on the timing of when they do this, right? It's typically at the end of the year when you're looking to see if you're going to get a bonus, how big that's going to be, or a raise. It's right there at that same time. Could even be that same meeting. And, so you're all nervous, and it's like, okay, what are they going to do or say to me? And then, really, so I'm only going to get a 1% raise this year. Yeah. Because I didn't tuck my shirt in that Thursday in April, or something like that, and I don't mean to be that trivial, but the timing of it is effectuous in that it gets people nervous.
It does. And if you are a leader who has provided the information to people throughout the year, that you've had these conversations about what projects went well, what they've done well, where they can grow and develop, what didn't go so well. Hopefully, if your organization is one that does annual reviews, that's just a recap of those conversations. If you're an organization that only does annual reviews, hopefully you are giving the employee the opportunity to do a self-review first. And then they're able to put in all the good things, right, that they want you to know, all the reasons that they think they should get a pay increase. What I like to do when I was in a role where I was leading staff like this is read their answers, give my responses, let them read it in advance of us even sitting down to talk about it, so that there wasn't a surprise right in the conversation. I know other organizations are moving to doing this quarterly, to doing it monthly, and all of those things can be good. But I think you have to be good at doing it annually first. Yeah. You can't take a process that is perceived as so kind of cumbersome and time intensive and that people psychologically struggle with and now make them do it quarterly until you're good at giving feedback in general.
I totally agree with you. I want to go back to what Ted was saying. Yeah. I want to point something out that Ted brought up here in the chat box. He's talking about one of the ways to keep an employee happy is to, provide, for lack of a better word, bonuses for hitting individual and team goals. And I've been in that environment, and I got to tell you, Ted, it pissed me off because I was a top producer, and not just in the Chicago, I was top producer in the country for this bank, but my teammates were anything but. And so my efforts got everybody on the team a $400 bonus at monthly, but that was it, because nobody else fulfilled their goals. Right. So I lost out on a lot of bonus money because I had teammates that just didn't want to put in the time and effort
for the ride.
Yeah.
And both to Bill and Ted, to both of you, I'd say I agree with Ted and I agree with Bill. It really depends on the kind of roles that you're talking about and how that compensation is structured. So in some cases, there's great opportunities to set up collective team bonuses. And in doing that, you also have to make sure that your leaders are addressing the people who are not pulling their weight. Because that's the fastest way to frustrate your people who are, is by not addressing those things. But there are also opportunities where individual performance needs to be recognized and acknowledged, and in some cases compensated, but also making sure that you're doing it in a way where you don't have people competing against each other to the detriment of the organization. Right. So there's a lot of work that can go into building comp structure.
I mean, I'm all for building a team and having a team work together and having team goals and team bonuses. I don't want to say that's a negative thing, Ted, by any means. I agree with you, Keri. I think it can be a good thing, but you have to. It's a different mindset too, right? You got to have that team mindset, not the individual mindset. I wasn't trying to be top 5% producer. It was just, that's how I worked.
Yeah, no, and there's definitely a place for that, and there's a need to compensate that. And I'll go back again to pay transparency too, letting people know what they can earn, how they earn it. And I know, Bill, you had made a comment earlier about, you would never want to be in a role where this is what you're going to make and that's all you could ever make, right? Giving some people exposure to how they get to different levels and what those levels can mean, and providing that transparency can be a good thing.
So you bring that up. So I don't know if you got wind of the news this morning, but it came out, Google is paying their interns equivalency of about $96,000 a year for an internship for the summer. They're several, $8,000, $9,000 a month.
How do I get it?
Right.
Right.
How do you think Google employees who work in the warehouse is making $15 to $18 an hour feeling? When the interns are making $45 to $50 an hour.
Well, are they interning in the warehouse?
No, I don't think they are.
No.
But I think that is, so I think there is an opportunity to make sure if those are the kind of things that you are doing as an organization, that you are able to articulate the business case for why you're doing those things.
Okay.
If you've got that kind of disparity between what you're paying warehouse employees and what you're paying your intern, then that's a decision you make as a business. You should just be prepared to articulate what that business case is for doing so.
And as a business owner, and we're trying to keep this in the perspective of small, medium-sized businesses, you have every right to make the choices you want to make, right? But we do have to understand there's that little word called consequences.
Yeah.
Which both can be good and negative. We tend to think consequences are always negative, but we use it that way more often. But it's the business owner does have that. But then we get back to our leadership conversation. And as a leader, you can't say do as I say and not as I do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but at the same time, I would love to be paid like the CEO, but I would hate to have the responsibilities. Right. I mean, I enjoy being the head of a department. It's stressful, it's challenging, it's rewarding. But at the same time, to sit at the top of the bank, I may not really enjoy.
Well, the stress in that position is really it's all about the money, right?
And I also think, though, if you are somebody who is in one of those roles, you're in the top seat, there is probably pretty clearly a disparity between what you make, and to the point of you may not want those responsibilities. As a leader, you have to be visible, right? So people know what you're doing, that you're not just somebody who is sitting there and collecting a large paycheck. People have to understand and know what you do. While also being responsible to making sure that the people who work for you, while they may not have the same income, have an income that they can live on as well.
Yeah, important. I mean, you've got to prove not only are you the face and voice of the business, but you're also the reputation of the business. And, you got to go to your employees. You got to let them know that, hey, I've got your back, and I'm building this and I'm building the brand and I'm making this look like the best company in the world. And you're working for the best company in the world. You want to have that impression.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as we are talking with Keri Bruin from Apex Coaching and Consulting, you had mentioned earlier in the show that a leader is inspires and influences, right? And the question that I would have is, as I'm a small business owner, and I'm trying to inspire and influence, and let's now drop this below 10 employees, right?
Okay.
And all of a sudden I'm trying to inspire and lead because it's my baby. It's a beautiful baby. And now I'm getting frustrated because you don't see or aren't giving the same passion to my baby as I think you should.
You mean you're 2 years old?
Right.
And you're starting to get that talk now.
So what kind of advice do you have for those that size of a business where it's hard to let go or let somebody else hold your baby that may also have a good vision for it, but may not be exactly your vision?
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough place to be because you started that business because you had that passion. You have put so much of your own blood, sweat, tears, probably personal finances, all these other things into bringing it to life. And you probably need to go into it remembering that nobody is going to love it the same way that you do. And that's just, that's the truth. But I think if you can find a way to work with people in a way that they feel a part of the business, that they see how their personal contributions contribute to the business, the success of the business, that they're acknowledged and rewarded along the way in ways that they value, that's going to go a long way. And part of that is having conversations with people, right, about what is meaningful for them, continuing to check in with people, understanding what they want from their careers, right? What they want is not the same thing that you want for your baby. So the more that you can understand what they're looking to do professionally, you can help them get there, whether it is within your business or outside of your business, but have some maybe some heads up if people are looking to go somewhere else, or to have people make graceful exits. And I think all of those things are important, but going into it realizing that nobody is going to love it like you do, but you can find talented people who want to help you move things forward if you are dealing with them in the right way.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point, value. So, because I've often talked with Kent, we've talked about this, and if you're the business owner, you really shouldn't be the salesman either, because you're selling your baby, and you're going to do it very differently than a more professional salesman might be offering your services, products out, and presenting the value. Same thing with the employees, and giving them that, not everybody's going to see things the way you see them. You do. I think it's important to be open-minded and allow others to kind of fill you in on how other people might see the value in what you're doing.
Exactly, to have those different perspectives too on how things are viewed beyond your own, beyond yourself, right? Which may be a little bit clouded by everything that you put into it. But to the extent possible, to take some of the emotions out of things where you can, and to remain curious and open-minded, and willing to let the talent that you hired do what they do.
Bingo. I love that line because you'd be thinking about that when you're hiring that person, that you're going to let them do what they do best, going to give them that opportunity. It can be painful sometimes. You let go of your baby and let somebody else hold on to it for a little bit. You don't want to step too far away. I want to make sure it's right there on the eyesight. I can catch it if you drop. But you have to do that.
Yeah.
And that's part of good leadership.
Shana, good morning. Shana says, hi, do you have exit strategy discussions when helping with the startup phase, or is that taboo?
I think it's a wise thing to do on a number of different fronts. Even if you're starting up what you hope to be as a family business, and there's an heir apparent or multiple heir apparents, and that just may not be something that they want. But understanding what your maybe your financial target is for that, or and so that's absolutely a piece of it. But then also making sure that you're prepared from a succession perspective, as an exit, or also in the case that you just need business continuity, because whether it's you as the business leader or one of your critical staff is out for a period of time or indefinitely, as part of your exit strategy, from a financial perspective, also making sure that you have an idea of what would happen from a succession perspective.
I would add, very smart to include succession planning in your startup phases. I'm starting a new business, but we're already talking about the succession plan, 3 to 5 years down the road. I think it's very important. You have to have a little bit of that end in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, whatever. I mean, if you're running a race, there's always a starting point and a finish point.
Yeah.
If you're doing a business, a lot of people, it'll go forever. Well, not necessarily. There's a finish line.
Yeah, and you're right, Keri. It might be a family member that you would want or hope to take over that business, but they don't want it. They don't want to have anything to do with it.
That's right.
I see this quite often when I work with some business owners and work with succession planning, and how either family doesn't want it, or one of 4 kids like, oh yeah, I absolutely want it. Okay, but how are you going to turn that business over, because they got to pay for it, right? Because you're selling the business in order to go and retire, right? And that's a lot of business owners' plans. What's your retirement plan? Well, I'm going to sell the business. Okay, but what's your plan? Well, I'm going to sell the business. And it's like, oh, okay, that's not a plan. Who are you selling it to? Well, I'm hoping to sell it to my employees, because I'm thinking they'll want this business. And then you find out, no, they don't. And now you're too late. You're thinking you're going to get out in the next 6 months.
Yep.
And now you really could, because a good succession plan needs a minimum of 3 years.
Yeah. And it's kind of like when you talk about your kind of, this is your baby, right? Like, you know, you want people on the team who love your baby as much as you do, but when you are ready to, I don't know, send your baby out of the nest, you also want to make sure that you have prepared appropriately for that too, because in a lot of ways that's your legacy.
Yeah, it is, and it's very, very important to keep that in mind because, you know, I do a lot of second generation business owners, and there are a number of them I just absolutely refuse to work with because they don't understand the blood, sweat, and tears that went into building that business up. It's as soon as it's handed over to them, they turn it into a bank. I'm like, I'm just gonna suck the money out of this because I can.
Yeah.
Because it's already built up, and you're not really. It's not your baby,
Yeah.
right? So it could be a distant cousin you don't like anymore, and, you know, but or that sibling that you can't stand. But,
right.
But yeah, so succession planning is very, very important, and the earlier you start, the better off you are.
And I mean, just if we're going to go back to coaching too, making sure that if you have these leaders identified, that they are in the position to be able to carry on with things in the event of an exit or, you know, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, the higher up you are, and you're the one exiting, the anxiety levels go up straight to the moon. And how is this going to continue going forward? You know, I've seen businesses that lose their top salesperson, you know, and all those relationships that go with it and everything. Or I've even seen, you know, where families sitting around and let's say the patriarch passed away who ran the business, whether it was the mother or the father, and then the kids are naturally thinking, oh, we're taking over. It's like, okay, but did you put in plan a way to pay for that? And typically there's insurance types of plans that cover those types of needs. But then all of a sudden you have the top salesman comes walking in and goes, no, I'm buying it. And like, no, this is a family business for 30 years and we're going to keep it in the family. No, you're not, because you're either going to sell it to me or I'm going to go over here and start my own business and I'm going to take all the clients with me. And you get into these scenarios. This is hence the value of succession planning.
Business killer.
There's just so many things that if you're in that world that you can see that can go wrong, that you do have to have a competent plan in place as early as possible. But I like the idea that, you know, you're right. Your coaching can be a big part of that, big part of helping that transition and the mindset, because that's really the big thing.
Yeah.
Again, you know, when you're talking smaller businesses, less than 10, like we are, you know, it gets tricky too, right? Because typically, if you've been with these folks for a long time, they're close to being family, and it's like, are you going to be able to protect them? You know, or are they going to be able to have a job when you've moved on? But you know, we're down to about 4 minutes. So I wanted to see if there's anything in particular we didn't discuss that you'd like to bring up that you specialize in, that you enjoy doing in your work.
So love having conversations like this. So if you are out there as a business owner and there's just some of these things you kind of want to talk through and think about what next steps for you from an HR perspective might look like, would love to chat. And then from a coaching perspective, I am completely an advocate of it, obviously, but as a coach, I have also, I work with a coach myself. And so I love working with leaders. I love working with leaders who are climbing yet, who are looking for upside in their career. And so helping them be able to navigate the things that come with leadership and establish their priorities is something that I'm super passionate about. So if that's something that you've been thinking about as yourself or for your business and you just want to learn more, please reach out.
Yeah, and if you haven't been thinking about it, you are now.
I hope so.
You should be now. I mean, you've got me thinking about it with this new business that I'm developing, and I'm finding great value in this conversation with you. Like every week, Kent, you and I get to learn so much every week, bringing amazing people like Keri on, and letting us and informing us of how amazing they are and how brilliant they are. And
I got so many. I scribble notes every week on your show. I got so many things. It's just trying to find time to put them into play. It's good.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
make sure you get out there and go check out Apex, APEXCCLLC.com. Check out everything
Absolutely.
Keri's got to offer.
And she's global, folks. She can help you out anywhere. Great.
Right.
So you
Right.
don't
But
have
she's
to be
local too. So,
Yeah. And give her a call, chat with her, see if she's a fit. If not, she's probably got some other coaches and people that she knows that may be a fit. There's probably somebody on her team.
Yep.
Could be as well.
I know she's very well connected.
Not quite as good, but right up there. Right?
There's lots of good, amazing folks. So really can't say enough about having you on here and all that we've learned today. This is good stuff.
I appreciate it, and I have definitely enjoyed chatting with you both.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. Thanks everybody for listening in. And we're wrapping up another week.
That's it.
Another amazing show.
That music means we got to run. This has been Innovative Strategies with Bill Hasse. Put me in coach with our good friend Keri Bruin. Keri DeBruin from Apex Coaching and Consulting. Come back 12:30 today for questions you never thought you could ask in church. Dial in anytime at 216-THE-NET. We thank you for getting caught in the net with us this morning. Remember, folks, be good. Be good to each other.